'cause I'm happy. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Dementia & Co. and our podcast, Enjoying Life with Dementia. I'm Jamie.
I'm Alison. And thank you for the questions and comments on YOD's young onset dementia.
Yeah, we've had a lot.
Yeah. Many are shocked at how young a few of our recent guests are.
Yeah, and how articulate they are as well.
It's true, yes. In the interest of time and privacy, we have sometimes taken off the repetitions and stutters.
Stutters.
Stutters. Yeah, stutters, including my own, right?
Yeah, like this one.
Well, however, I am happy that people have noticed how young a person with dementia can be. Actually, our youngest friend is still in his 30s. Yeah. And also that many of us have maintained our executive functions and are still very independent.
That's true, but I feel that it's important to note that while the changes can be quite subtle for a long time, especially with young onset dementia,
Like Chris and I, yeah.
exactly. YODs also tend to deteriorate at a much higher speed in their later stages. So it goes really fast once it catches up with you.
Yeah. And we have to be prepared for it as well.
Yeah. Our guest today actually has been a prolific speaker who has addressed hundreds of world-renowned people in his official capacity as a medical doctor and a medical expert. So today, he's generously sharing his true present self with all of the effects of dementia.
And now I have the great honor of introducing our friend from UK, Dr. Alastair Benbow. Very honored to have you here, Alastair, and also really grateful that you are willing to share your journey with us.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. To kick off, Alastair, can you share with us a little bit about background, your childhood days, your life, your family life?
Sure, of course. So back a long way away, I was born in September in 1958. And funnily enough, my mother had just thought she had a single child, but they were actually both my brother and myself. We had identical twin brothers.
Right.
Although I was 10 minutes ahead of my brother, so I was in charge.
Yeah.
My father was a veterinary surgeon, and he saved the first lion that had been ill at Longleat Safari Park, which had just started at Longleat Safari Park. And he did all that for many years, and then in 1970, when he was 72, he died. But my mother is an amazing woman still. She's still alive at 90. I've got a sister who's 18 months older than I am. I've got a younger brother who's 3.5 years younger than my brother and I. And then my twin brother and I were at school. We were very active. We did lots of activities, tennis and football and rugby and running and cricket. And then eventually I was the head boy at school, which was a bit unusual, but I seemed to get on quite well. And then previously, I had asthma when I was 4 years old. And I was told everyone that I was going to be a doctor, or I told everybody that. And when I was at school, my maths was pretty excellent. And I was told, oh, you've got to be a mathematician. But I was so determined to be a doctor when I had got my asthma years gone by. And eventually I went to, I did my A-level, got all the amount, and went to St Thomas's Hospital in central London and became the medical doctor, and finally a respiratory physician, and worked in a number of different hospitals, and it seemed to come across pretty well. And I really enjoyed the medical experience, saw lots of patients and people, and then a number of years, 20 years down the line, I decided to join the pharmaceutical industry. And I was part of that as one of the medical doctors.
Super. So you were a GP, or were you specialized in certain areas?
I was a respiratory physician, in the hospital. So I was looking after lots of people who'd got chest diseases and all sorts of different things. And then eventually, when I went into the pharmaceutical industry, I had a whole load of medical doctors who were part of the pharmaceutical industry, where we were trying to bring new medicines to all sorts of people to help improve things.
Incredible. So you know everything about health, and you sound like a really, really athletic person as well.
Active, yeah,
In
active
school.
lifestyle.
Yeah. So what are your hobbies?
Well, so I was very keen to do a lot of running. So I did a number of marathons, for particularly London Marathon with 26.2 miles, and I absolutely loved it. And then my twin brother and I decided that we would like to raise some money and funds for people, and we did a three-legged marathon. And officially, there had been some people who'd done three-legged marathon years before, but we ran the marathon in April in 1998, and we broke the Guinness World Record in 3 hours, 40 minutes and 16 seconds. And then a few years later, we broke a new half marathon. Yeah. So officially, and this is going to sound silly, there's an official Guinness World Record.
Bravo.
Yeah. So, but it was, and we were tied together at the wrists, and also three-legged pair of running trousers, which we had done.
In the trousers.
So trousers, yes. We had a three-legged trouser, so the one set of legs between the two of us. So I was on the left-hand side, my brother was on the right-hand side, and we did pretty well.
Wonderful. Wow. So, it's incredible to hear, like you're in the medical profession and you're such an active person. And people always wonder, people with dementia must be the ones who are not very active, or not using too much of the brain. And here you and I are.
Yeah.
Indeed we are.
Of a unique kind, but many of us in this field. So how did it come about? When did you feel that something was array?
Well, originally, back in 2006 and 2007, I had originally realized that my right leg was tremoring. And I was seen by the hospital, and they were certain that I had Parkinson's disease. And then after about 6 months, the tremor went to my right arm, and my right leg stopped. And they did various suggestions and questions and thought about it, and they eventually said, "Oh, you've got Parkinson's disease." And I was silly. That's a picture of the brain.
Yes.
Where there's a red and a yellow piece where the left side of my brain had become challenging. But as time had gone by, I kept saying, "I'm not sure that it's Parkinson's. I think what's going on." And I was getting sleep at night, and anything between 2 to 3 hours, and then at 4 to 5 hours, and staying awake during the night. And I kept challenging the hospital experts, and eventually they agreed that the left temporal lobe atrophy became my semantic dementia. And I had difficulty with shopping lists and trying to describe items, and typically for me now, I can talk about things in the morning, but actually later in the day it's much more challenging. So basically, I had some difficulty with shopping lists and was trying to describe items, and I couldn't remember names, especially later in the day, and so on. And then officially, they had originally said, "Oh, you've got semantic dementia." And then fundamentally later on, when I might describe to you, I have got semantic dementia and Parkinson's disease,
Right.
which is
Yeah.
very unusual.
Yes.
But as I described to you with the the CAT scan, that
Right.
the left side of the brain has got worse over a number of years, and most of the treatments don't work for tremor and bradykinesia. So they give me lots
Right.
of medicines. Most of it doesn't actually work. But then typically, we know that the semantic dementia is often known as primary progressive aphasia, and
It's one track of
so on.
PPA, yes.
Yeah, exactly that. And typically, and for me, and I've seen lots of people who have something very similar. So presenting symptoms, you lose words, you lose ability to match words and images. You often have a long-term memory that deals with common knowledge and facts, but it's actually quite struggling to get it later in the day. And typically, the picture I showed earlier,
right,
classically, the temporal lobe atrophy is getting worse and is associated with clinical and neuropsychological features, and gradually gets worse. And but I'm still trying to do everything I can, which is very challenging.
Challenging, yes.
Yeah, and typically, for the semantic dementia, it was difficulty with trying to describe naming pictures and objects and the word comprehension of doing things, and how do you use the categories and knowing uses and features of objects and things, and it's quite difficult for spontaneous speech. And
Right.
typically, so for example, this morning I can talk about this,
Yes.
but later in the day, my brain is not working so well, and
Right.
and I have difficulty with the spontaneous speech creation and doing things, and how do I use the meaningful words and so on.
Right.
And classically, most people know about this, and where there is, you know that the semantic dementia gradually gets worse. And if you think about it from what I described as the 2006, you get anything 8 to 10 years, and the progression keeps going, and it can lead to behavioral and social difficulties, and it is much more difficult and getting worse. But having said that, I keep trying to do everything I can with support for other people, to talk to other people about it, and how do you work with the experts and try and make it better.
Right. Actually, what comes to mind immediately when you said about your trembling and being diagnosed with Parkinson's, the person I think of is Robin Williams. So he was diagnosed with Parkinson's. Even till when he passed, they still thought he had Parkinson's, but actually he had Lewy body dementia. And Parkinson's is usually associated with Lewy body, and it's very unusual that you have a combination of Parkinson's and semantic PPA dementia, and yours is semantic PPA, and I have PPA, but I have a locogenic variant, which is quite different. So yes, thank you for the description. It's so important for people to realize that for semantic is identifying the object with a name, and sometimes it's difficult to match that. And the other point that you raised also is something I experienced, that later in the day things get more difficult.
I noted that as well, because I feel like that's when I noticed the most that you need a break, or you have more trouble finding the words. It happens definitely later on in the day.
Yeah, and especially when I don't take a rest. Like most afternoons, I could go down if I have a very busy morning. I take a nap for an hour, sometimes an hour and a half. It's so strange. My brain is just so tired. So thanks for those points as well. And you are doing quite a bit of work with rare dementia support. You are doing also other kind of advocacy work. Can you share with us this wonderful work that you're doing?
Well, I'm doing all sorts of things to try and talk to people, meet with people, work how you do it, and it's so I talk to lots of people about it, and raise so for example,
Yes.
I talk to a whole load of hospital people in different places. Some people don't understand what's going on, and I explain what's happening and how do you do it. And I think it's trying to describe how the change has happened and what's going on and so on. And officially people suddenly start to think, hang on a minute, there is something different about this. It's a new diagnosis. It's the new diagnosis is tricky. How do you recall the dementia? About the society, what is it, and how do you linkage with it, and how does it approach the family? And because some people, I mean, I met with several other people who officially suddenly thought that some of their family, oh, they're just being silly, whereas actually fundamentally, it's different, and it comes later in the day, and it's you try and help people, the family and friends, and what do you go forward with it, and really understand what's going on, and how do you help them with it, because for us individually it's pretty challenging, and I think some people think it's rather oh, you're a bit silly,
Yes.
whereas it just is the way that it is, and I think sorry,
I
carry
think
on.
it's so important that you talking to these groups, and we have so many different kind of forums that we have formed, and it's important to speak with the family members, as you mentioned. Even care partners who've been care partners for quite a few years are suddenly shocked when they hear from another person living with dementia and say, "This is exactly what I experienced," and then they say, "Oh, gee, really? And this is for real? I thought he was just
Yeah.
being funny and not wanting to do something and acting up and things like that." But when they hear in a group that, okay, somebody acts like this and the other person is the same, we experience similar and different from this challenge, then people become to understand. So what about your family, Alastair? How is your journey so far? How is your family taking it?
I think at one level it's reasonable, but there are times when it's quite challenging, particularly at the end of the day. So they find it rather difficult, and I think I think it can be quite tricky with my family, because it's a bit more of a concern, and they ask me to talk about something, and it's quite difficult at the end of the day. Whereas actually what I'm trying to do now is to write things down more officially, but because it can be quite tricky, and I think for the family, so classically, I see some of my children and friends and family and what have you, and in the morning I can describe exactly what happens as a medicine and so on, and then later in the day it becomes much more challenging, and I think it's quite difficult, and I think and people will ask you to do something, just talk about it, whereas now I start to do some writing, and how do I help and share with people what they can help to do it, as opposed to just talking about it, because it's quite challenging.
And do you also keep a journal, Alastair?
I'm writing things, a whole load of writing stuff down. So it's like a whole load of pieces of paper. I write some things down to try and help it, and and basically it how do you help people to understand what's actually going on with your brain, and and how are the thoughts of it, and the behavior of it during the course of the day, what's the diagnosis of the dementia and how it relates to the brain, and how do you stop the speech and the sounds, and what do you actually do about it, and so that's what I'm trying to do, is to help people what's going on, and some of them understand it, and some of them think, oh, this is nuts, what's going on.
I find that writing a journal, especially in my earlier days, helped me to understand my own dementia much better, because in writing it out, expressing myself, and understanding my anger or my disappointment with myself, actually helped me to clear all these things that are blocking my head too, and clear the negative emotions that I've been holding. And by, then I also realize now that I'm actually able to use these notes for other people to explain things as well. Yeah, so the point that you brought up is also very helpful, that you are writing it down to show other people, to share with them your journey.
Exactly. That's the best, to try and do that as much as you possibly can, so that people understand what's going on. But it's a little bit patchy at times, because people think, oh, what on earth's going on, and so on. But that's one of the best ways of trying to do it. But it can be quite challenging at the end of the day.
Yes. So what do you find most helpful? First of all, with the family, what are the support that they give you, which you find most helpful?
So I think they are helpful. I think trying to help with the family and the friends, and help the support with what my brain is like, and so on, and is helpful. But also at other times, because historically I had been helping do various bits and pieces, and giving information and so on, it all comes across as a little bit weird at the end of the day. So that it's somewhat challenging, but I think I'm still trying to help with everybody, and so on. But it's a little bit more flexible in terms of how do you actually do it at times, and I think that's that can be quite tricky.
What about your friends, Alastair? Are they fairly receptive to you tell everybody?
Yes, so I've told various people, but some of them don't quite understand what's going on, frankly, because they think, oh well, oh no, you're all fine, and what have you, and because it's, they can talk to you in the morning, and then later in the afternoon or evening, it's a bit more challenging, and they think, what on earth's going on? How does that work?
So we get it all the time.
Yeah, and you try and explain to them, oh, this is different, and what have you, and oh, I can write this down, and so on. But it's quite challenging.
Yeah. Do you find that your friends are largely willing to accept when you've explained to them what's going on, or has there been a bit of resistance?
A bit of resistance, because they think, oh, you're fine, don't worry about it. Whereas actually it's different. It's different.
Right.
Yeah, so and so silly things happen. So some of my friends and family ask me a particular question. Oh, have you heard this, and this? Because they don't think about it. And I can give some information about it, but not later in the day. So they think, oh, this is a bit weird. What's going on?
True. I think, like our friends, Chris and Karen, and you and I are in a similar state, where people say, you're fine, you're speaking so well, and then you can organize this, and you're out there, so so don't tell us different stories. And that's actually a bit hurtful sometimes, because we actually work much harder to even say the same thing as people, and also just to plan something, it takes a lot more effort that people do not appreciate. That's a bit sad.
Is absolutely right. Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Do you find some super people out there who are very helpful, who are very supportive of yourself and other dementia persons?
Yeah, so I'm definitely talking to some people in terms of, you're able to talk about the concern and the challenge and biggest issues, and how do you help your days and weeks and so on, particularly when it's later in the day. So some people are helping that, but I mean, I think, yeah, sometimes it's more challenging.
Yeah.
But and classically, how do you fully understand what's going on and how does it work and what have you? It's and they're trying to contribute some of it, but and then when you have a conversation in the morning, and then they think, oh, you're fine, but
Yes,
that's not the way. That's not the way it works most of the time.
So do you also experience a behavioral change now? Do you notice any change in your behavior so far?
Yes, definitely. There's no question. So and this is going to sound silly. Typically, I on a Saturday morning I do a park run, and historically I have every 6 to 8 weeks I would do a run director, and do various bits and pieces, and people think, oh, this is great, and rather stupidly, I decided that I would do a song for the run director, literally a minute and a half or 2 minutes of various things and describing bits and pieces of it. But classically, when I've been doing it for, I don't know, 12 or something, every few months, I have to have a piece of paper,
right,
with with it on there, because I know I know exactly how to record it.
Yes.
But if I can't, but I have to have the page in front of me, because I cannot be able to talk about it because it's no longer in my brain. So but then people don't understand. They don't know that I've got the page where I'm actually describing it. And so they think it's great. Whereas fundamentally for me, if I haven't got the page, I can't do the song.
Right.
So it's a strange one, but and officially
fine, right?
it's fine. Yeah, they think it's okay.
I think we just have to, do what we can with whatever, support that we can find, and just enjoy ourselves.
Exactly.
And let others enjoy themselves too. And
yeah,
what would you say to somebody who is now just being diagnosed or waiting for the diagnosis?
Any advice from the journey?
Well, so I think it's very, very important for them to understand exactly what is happening and how it's going to get. Is it going to get worse? I would raise the issue, the concern, the challenge, and what's the biggest issues for it. How do you help your days and weeks? How do you help with your family and share with the ongoing issues, and how do you get it better, and particularly try and write some of it down, because if you lose it, or you've just got it in your brain, you forget it. So I try and help people, to encourage them to write some things down so that they can say, oh, I've got the page, I know how to do it. But officially, when you start, you think, well, it doesn't really, it's not very bad, but officially it gradually gets slowly worse. And I think I think it's very important that you help with your family and friends, and what do you really want to tell people about this? And I think you should help some people with it, and the concern and the challenge that can be helpful, but it's quite challenging. So it's a bit, as I described you with the picture of this, sharing that with somebody else, I think actually is quite helpful. And typically, when I had the brain and got it, I was sharing it with people, and people say, "Oh, you've got just a bit of treatment,"
Right.
whereas fundamentally, often the where the diagnosis is in the brain, it doesn't happen. So often you're giving a medicine, it doesn't do very much.
Yeah.
And that makes it much more challenging. And then you can describe how the dementia gets worse. And trying to help with other people, so you understand, yes, it's more challenging, but let's just see how it goes, and what have you, because it's and at one level there are lots of people who have different activities, so different psychology. Have you got hearing? Have you got perception? Have you got language? Have you got memory? Have you got questionnaires? That's
So many
because some
things
people,
to be affected.
yeah, so some people have got those and some people haven't got those.
Right.
So it's quite challenging, but I think fundamentally trying to help with other people and understand what's going on, how does it, it's quite challenging.
Right. May I ask this question, and don't answer you. What is your biggest fear at the moment?
Ooh, I think if I'm brutally honest, I think if everything gets worse, I might kill myself, because I think, well, how is that helpful? What does it do with the family and so on? And so, I'm sorry, that's a bit of a stupid thing for me to say.
No, it has crossed many minds, including mine. I feel, and with Jamie, we have discussed those stages, and our slogan is we have to be prepared for the worst and live for the best. So, what are the best moments for you at the moment?
I think I love seeing family and young children and babies and so on, and I try and do everything I can with people and support them and love it. And yeah, I'm trying my best to do all sorts of other things, and I'm going out and I'm doing delivery for things. I'm talking to people. I'm doing everything I possibly can to continue to do some things, but it's quite challenging.
Very useful in your own mind, right? In supporting
That's
other
the
people.
idea.
Yeah.
I think
Yes,
that
please.
reminds me of something that you say a lot, Mom, which is that it's so important to have an impact and be beneficial to the people around you. And it's so lovely that you're finding ways to do that. And especially, I think, from the point of view of, I suppose, more of the care partner, there's no way that you could ever not be beneficial to me in like our relationship. So it's very much like, as long as you're still there, present, and wanting to benefit me, the fact that you're even there at all is going to benefit me. So that's just something that I thought of. Yeah.
Well, I think that's there are challenging elements of it and the parts of the day and what have you, but I think the more you can do to help with other people and talk about it and so on, I think is good. But there are some people who it is pretty challenging.
Yes. And we have, I think every individual has the right to decide, what is what is enough or what is good for themselves and for the family. It's just one point that I know. I've sent a few people off these few years. And the one thing that I noticed is that although we may be in, a friend of mine has been in bedridden for 3.5 years, and she can only move her eyes. But even then, when I visit her and sing a song or touch her, and I can still, not all the time, every now and again, she looked and stared blankly at me, but at other times she looked and I see her. And there's this smile and the light in there. And with her husband, it is whatever state she's in, as long as she's there, he is happy.
Yeah.
He is, so I'm thinking of Jamie also. Of course, she would be my main concern, that at times when I think of it, I'm thinking, and we've discussed, the different ways of communication and etc. But I'm also thinking, if I'm not of any use to anybody, and I'm creating so much trouble for other people, why should I stay around? But on the other hand,
I would want you to stay.
yeah,
Selfishly, and of course, if that's your decision as much as it can be, but selfishly, I would want to have that relationship for as long as possible.
yes. But we also go to the extent of a discussion that when it's time for me to leave, she has to let me go. Even if it's vice versa, because we don't know what can happen tomorrow. So we have the extent of a discussion that when the time is up for any one of us, we have to be strong enough and caring enough to let the other party go smoothly. And sometimes when I speak with care partner, I cruelly mention this and say that maybe you should let your dad know that you still love him, but everything is fine. The grandchildren are okay. Your business is okay. And if you are staying, we definitely love you to be here. And because that's what we really, really love. But if you feel that it's time to leave, please leave in peace, knowing that we are fine. It's an awful, but it's a very difficult time and a difficult conversation. But I think it's also necessary that we bring it up. So thank you for being so honest and open.
Yeah. So I mean, so classically, I've been and talked to lots of people of various things, and eventually you think, well, hang on, how am I going to actually be able to help that? And it's a bit more challenging. But so we'll see.
Yeah. So the meantime is, like we have it here for Dementia and Co. Our slogan is enjoying life with dementia. So this is what we want to do. And people think, oh my gosh, you're doing so many things. And no, but I enjoy it. It's just like you. It's wonderful to hear, the work that you're doing, Alastair, and going out and reaching out to people, and especially for people who are just being diagnosed, right? For you to be able to be there and share your experience will help both the person living with dementia and the care partner.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you would like? Sorry, go ahead.
I don't think so. I mean, I just hope if it's helpful to your team in Singapore and what have you, you can share with anything that I've talked about or any of the writing or whatever, because I think it's helpful for other people to understand what on earth's going on and how is it, and so
Thank
whatever.
You so much. That is so important. Yes. Thank you so much that we have your agreement, your consent to do this. Yep. Is there anything else that you would like to tell the society, the world, in UK, in we also have friends in New Zealand, in Australia, definitely Singapore.
I mean, I think so. I've got all the literature, but I'm happy to talk to anybody if it's helpful as to what's going on, and may or may not be helpful to people. But I think and at the Queen Square, I've had a whole load of people have been doing all sorts of testing for me, doing MRI scans and CT scans and testing sessions and all sorts of things. And they're looking at it and going to see what's going on. But I'm still trying to contribute as much as I can, even though I know that it's not going to actually help very much. But it's helpful to them
definitely
to understand
will
what's
help.
going on. Yeah.
So you're participating in many of the research programs. Yeah. And funny enough, I also participate in some of the programs in UK,
from
also
here.
in Singapore. So yeah. So we are all into it. Yep.
Well, Alastair, can I just ask, as we're getting, closer towards the end of this conversation, I wanted to know, what would your message be to people who maybe don't have much of an awareness of dementia and what you're going through, or what this, how it works? What would that sort of first message be if you had one?
So I think understanding the brain, particularly to get the brain, the MRI scan and the CT scan, I think is very important to understand that there is a hole in the brain that is going to have an impact on people, and it will probably get worse because most people don't understand exactly what's happening. So I think, and it's quite challenging for people in the brain because they don't really understand what is actually going on, and I think
because you can't see it, can you?
You can't see it. So I think trying to understand what is actually happening with the brain, I think, is quite important. So I think
go out and consult somebody, specialist, as soon as possible.
I think you should. I think you should, and I think because some people say, "Oh no, you're fine." Actually, fundamentally, I think you need to have the MRI scan or the CT scan and assess it.
Right, that would be so important for the level of acceptance too, just to be able to say, no, it's not anything else. There's no question. This is what's going on, and then you can kind of cut to that accepting the situation and working with it from there. Because if you don't have that knowledge, there's really nothing that you can do in that field.
And there is some areas where there are some psychology that you can. Some people might think about it, and how is it the language and the memory and thinking about the brain and what's going on. I think and is there a new experimental psychology tasks and how does that actually work? And I think it's actually important. And because what does the body do, and how does it affect the heart rate, the pupils, the brain, the MEG scan, and so on? All those things are really important, and some of them will get, to start with it, almost nothing, but it will gradually get worse. But it's very important to continue to look at them.
Exactly. Actually, Chris and I both were also diagnosed by neuropsychologists, and they are also important to consult.
That is very important, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for this full hour, Alastair, and also for your consent to spread everything that you have said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we'll have more sessions, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I hope that so please share with whatever you need to. That's no problem at all. And if we need to have a further conversation, let's do that.
Yes, thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much for being here, Alastair. And for anyone, everyone who's watching, thank you for coming and joining us in this chat. It's been great to see the responses from all of you and from the questions that you might have. Please feel free to reach out to us at dementiaandco@gmail.com, or just right here where this podcast is.
Yes. And so we have a monthly podcast, and we also have tea dances in 6 community centers right now, and many other activities. If anybody in the family should have any concerns, we have also private forums And also I run the Young Onset Dementia Social Club at Dementia Singapore. And also Dementia Singapore has an extremely comprehensive, there goes, network website that you can also check on. AIC has lots of information on this. And if for anybody with dementia, please go onto the Cara Card app. Yeah, extremely useful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we will see you in the next one.